get into question two, but you're listening to the Reimagine Public Safety Debate 2024 for Black Portland. Let's dive into question two, which is really going to be focused on the Portland street response. So again, let's keep it in 2020, but 2020, Portlanders voted overwhelmingly to institute the Portland Street Response, an alternative emergency response call for vulnerable Portlanders experiencing crisis. Despite the Portland Street Response popularity and the expectation that it would eventually evolve into 24/7 services, so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the budget has been under attack for over 2 years, resulting in slashed budgets and slowed down the implementation and getting us to that great goal of 24 hours, 7 days a week. I'm going to go to you, Timur, first, sure. But my question is, where do you see the Portland Street Response within the context of public safety, and what are your plans to ensure the future of Portland Street Response and its services? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just start by saying I think Portland Street Response has really proven its success in terms of a city program, and I believe, and I'm committed to that future of it is a city program that is a co-equal branch of our city government. A number of years ago, I was acting as the emergency response policy advisor at the city, and the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management did not have the ability to use lights and siren, and that law was changed, and now they can go lights and siren. And so my vision for Portland Street Response is we can change the law and allow it to go lights and siren if someone needs help. We can change the law to allow them to block a lane of traffic if that's what it takes to keep someone safe. And so we need to be kind of proactive about allowing them the tools to operate effectively. I'm committed to the future where it is operating 24/7 citywide. And really, what role does it have? Things like welfare checks, if someone's in crisis, and I said this at a previous debate too, I think the beauty of Portland Street Response is for the people it serves, it buys them time. And so it slows down time. It allows someone to have that kind of genuine conversation, first you got to build the connection. And then for, the other kind of quote public safety bureaus, whether that's police or fire, we as a city, we don't want them to be on a call for 2 hours. And they don't want to be on a call for 2 hours. But that's the beauty of Portland Street Response is they're able to have that time to work with someone to get them to kind of a stabilized position to then work on their next needs. And so, some people say, Portland Street Response, you're acting like it's gonna solve all our problems. It's not gonna solve all our problems, but for the people that it serves, it has a huge role to play in our public safety continuum.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna pass it to you. Same question. Where do you see the Portland Street Response within the context of public safety? And what are your plans to ensure the future of the Portland Street Response and its services?
Yeah, I'll pick up a little bit on what Timur was saying about the way that having a first responder branch that is co-equal with our fire and police, that also is allowing for the time that is needed to serve somebody that's in crisis. And that is a huge benefit to Portland Street Response, in my opinion, in addition to just in general, it being able to tackle lower acuity calls so that we can use our most expensive resources towards the things that need those specialized services. I think the other thing too, just to peel it back a little bit, is to really understand what are the things that we're seeing on our street, right? And then what is the appropriate response for that? Because what I often get frustrated about is this general narrative that, interacting with the public is you have to go in with some kind of guard, right? Like somebody that's experiencing a crisis, they are the victim in this situation, not the person responding to them, right? And so making sure that we are just kind of shifting our overall narrative on how we view what our communities need and what kinds of services they need and how to give it to them, I think is a big part of why Portland Street Response is a part of this reimagining public safety, right? Because we have built a system that has depended on force, it has depended on punitive measures, things that are draconian, and we know that humans, they need care, they need softness, they need attention, and they need unique specialized services. And that's just not the kind of toolbox that the police have. And so if we are continuing to make that the only blunt force tool in our larger society, we're going to continue to fail our community members. So that is the role that I see PSR playing, in addition to just largely being able to add to the capacity, because there are just more calls. I mean, we're getting thousands more calls every year, and we need to ensure that we're meeting that, because right now it's like we haven't even talked about the fact that response times are abysmal, and people that need help aren't getting it, and PSR is one way to strengthen that.
Thank you. Very practical approach to it. Like it's not working. Let's make some changes. I would love to talk a little bit about that last piece you mentioned about the response time. You mentioned, and I think we're all in agreement here, like particularly East Portland tends to get the help last. Or I mean, and I think a lot of folks are even around the city who are not used to it. I would say, like for a lot of people of color, we're used to that in a sad way. We're used to folks not prioritizing us when we need help. But it feels like East Portland is getting it quite a bit. I'm curious, any response to that, Timur, and even some policy changes that might lead to it. Yeah.
Sure. So I was on a ride along with a police officer about 3 weeks ago, and one of the things I noticed is, she would get a call from dispatch, and what she would do is pick up her phone and then call the person and say, are you still needing a police response? Is this really an emergency? And I was just I was kind of impressed, because it was like she was kind of going to the calls by phone and addressing those, and most of the time it didn't need the police response. And so my question is, why is this police officer in her car, when their job is really to dispatch and go, why is she doing it? Because I mean, she was doing a great job of doing it, but I think we need to take that back one step to the 911 center, and it's like we need to be kind of more strategic and careful about where we're asking police to go. Why, if it's just a phone call, again, you don't need a gun to make a phone call. Why can't 911 be a little bit more strategic in that? And so I think for me, it really comes down to the matrix of how 911 is dispatching these calls. And if there aren't alternatives like Portland Street Response, then that kind of, I guess, then everything just ends up going to the police. And so again, I'll give you another example from this ride along. We were sent to an 11-year-old child who just was kind of running away from home. And luckily the police officer I was with, recognized, we shouldn't be going to this call. And so she, I mean, if she's realizing it, how do we get it to the point where the system also realizes that, right? The system needs to realize that. She realizes it, I realize it. When, again, an 11-year-old child, why are we sending someone with a gun to go there? It just does not make sense. And so the more we can be strategic with our resources, and, the common sense thing we all realize, the job of city council is to institutionalize those on a systemic level.
Thank you. Seems like a lot of synergy across the table here around response time and putting our dollars and resources towards solutions that seem to work. I'm gonna pass it back to you, Candace, see if there's anything else to add, since you kind of started this conversation around kind of not just the Portland Street response, but other ways from a policy perspective to increase the response times, particularly in East Portland, which again doesn't always get the services they deserve.
Yeah, I mean, I think one observation in general for me about East Portland, and I think our communities in particular are familiar with this, is being both over and under policed. So I see police often when I'm driving around, walking around, but when it comes to there's a phone call and made to 911, which they're obviously dispatching different kinds of services, but the wait times are horrible, and I think that disconnect is really frustrating for people because they don't understand why they are seeing a presence and they're not feeling the impacts of that presence helping to mitigate situations or whatever, right? And I think too, we've just built our whole systems around police. And so it's gonna take a lot for us to communicate to the people what alternatives are, because, from the communities I come from, especially, I think a lot about this as somebody who comes from an immigrant family in particular. In Guatemala, police are, dangerous. They're often really tied with corruption. I'm not saying that that's not the case in America. Of course, we know that. But I think that people come to this country, immigrant families come to this country, and they expect police to help them. And so I think that's also, we need to be talking about the cultural impact of like how people want help. Because I think that's where all these conversations get muddied, and then it just kind of defaults to, and so therefore we need more police, and it's like that's not what people are telling you. They're telling you that they need help, and it's our responsibility to create alternatives to that help. So yeah, I think that's and all of this, I think, is just tied back to, the kind of community work that's important that we do to ensure that people understand and that we understand what people are looking for, and we're providing a solution that isn't, historically oppressive to our people.
Thank you so much for that.